Chuck Dick, the co-chair of the programming committee for California Arbitration, and I have the privilege today of another one in our series of interviews we call California Conversations. I've really been looking forward to this interview because uh, we are going to be talking today with one of the most high energy leaders in the ADR community here in California, a delightful person, and I'm happy to introduce to those of you who may not have had an opportunity to meet Diana Kruze in person. You're going to get a wonderful opportunity to know more about a remarkable human being, and I'm delighted to have you with us today, Diana. Welcome to California Conversations.
Well, thank you, Chuck. I'm so honored to be here and to take part in this conversation with you.
I mentioned here sort of obliquely at the front that you are one of the leaders in our ADR community. Indeed, you are serving now as the chair of the subcommittee for California Lawyers Association that concentrates on alternative dispute resolution issues. Obviously, one of those is international commercial arbitration among your larger portfolio, but I'm introducing you not only as a practitioner, but as a literally a leader in this ADR community. So I'm interested in learning a little bit more about how you got involved in all of this in the first place. You are a San Francisco native, as I recall.
I am. I was born and raised in San Francisco, and I grew up with two parents in the educational field. So my father is a professor, retired, luckily. He moved on to greener pastures, but he was an East Asian politics professor for most of his career. And my mom was a science teacher in the Oakland Unified School District. So I got exposed to a lot of international influence and a lot of science and technology early on in my life. I was thinking because my mom is helping me clean out my house and vice versa. And we just found the first computer she brought home, a little Mac. And boy, is she an ancient relic. So I might be able to sell her on eBay for $1, or I might just keep her for sentimental purposes. I haven't decided yet, but I definitely grew up with an international and technology-based background and just in the vibrant and diverse community that San Francisco is.
Now, that perhaps explains how you ended up spending some time in Russia. Tell us a bit more about that part of your formative years.
Well, I went to school in New York, so I've been in California for almost all of my life, but I went to undergrad in New York. And I was very interested in studying abroad because I did a lot of classes in Russian studies and physics and in politics. And I fell in love with Dostoevsky and Pushkin. And so I wanted to do a study abroad program. But one of my professors and the chair of the Russian studies department there was like, well, why would you pay for a study abroad program when you can just go and live and work there for a year? And so she basically helped me through the visa process, which is one of the most intense interviews, Chuck, I have ever experienced in my life at the Russian embassy in New York. And helped me get a job, helped me find a place to live. And I ended up spending some time in Russia, and it was really an incredible experience in my life because being exposed to such a different way of life, and a different educational system, a different legal system. I loved my time there. So I was very lucky to spend a year there. And then I came back to law school to San Francisco after that.
Well, you were in Russia in an interesting phase of the country's history. Maybe you could amplify a little bit about some of the experiences that you encountered there.
Well, it was post, obviously, the fall of the Soviet Union, and I was in Sochi, which most people know as the place of the Olympics, right? But this was pre-Olympics. So the town looked very, very, very different then than it does now after, all the influx of, money and structure that they poured into it pre those huge festivities. But I must say the political and just economic and educational systems are vastly different, right? And legal systems as well than they are here. And it was fascinating meeting so many people there and talking with them, mostly academics, actually, is the people that I ended up getting to know really well. The both the quiet opinions and the loud opinions. And the one of the most fascinating discussions is because of the interplay with science and physics, I learned a lot about Chernobyl and the Russian government's response to that disaster. And so when I saw the HBO series on that, I was uh, I was just blown away, right, by um, just the way that the both the community and the governmental institutions and the scientific communities were involved and reacted. And so people share certain opinions quietly that they don't share publicly there. But it was nice to be part of that conversation as well.
If I were to have encountered you for the first time and heard this story, I would have thought you'd have ended up going into the Foreign Service instead of law school. So tell me what caused you to pursue a career in the legal profession.
I probably should have, Chuck, right? A lot of people regret the day they started in law school. So perhaps there's an alternate universe where I would have done that. But my mom loves to tell the story, speaking of my mother again, that she knew that I was going to be a lawyer when I was 4 years old, because apparently, once I started talking, I also started arguing at every point, and apparently developed a reputation at a very young age of also being an advocate for other people's problems, and uh, and sticking up for the little guy whose voice wasn't heard. So I actually knew I was going to be a lawyer. Frankly, that was on the "what are you going to be when you grow up" list, basically perennially. And I've always been just fascinated with our judicial system and have a deeply rooted sense of the importance of justice and the importance of having an opportunity to be heard. And so I knew that I was destined for law school. So I was ready to swallow the pill after I came back from Russia. I did have a brief stint first as a paralegal in a big New York City law firm. And I remember I worked under the managing partner, and he said, "Oh, Diana, I thought you were one of the smart ones. And here you go, off to law school, like all the paralegals do." So I was a disappointment to him as well.
Was there anything in law school that would explain how your career has taken you in the direction of alternative dispute resolution?
Well, I've always been really interested in ADR, and I got to go to school at Hastings, now formerly Hastings, now UCSF. And it's just a fantastic place to be because you're sandwiched right between the Supreme Court of California, the trial court, the Northern District of California, where I clerked. And so I would sit basically in law school and watch trials, watch oral arguments, right? Either at 450 Golden Gate or at the trial court and Superior Court. And I learned, frankly, very, very early in my legal career, right? When I wasn't even yet a lawyer, that you can have the best case in the world and things can end very differently than you would anticipate. And I learned too, because I started my practice at a big firm, right? Like one of the big AmLaw firms, that litigation is horribly expensive. So even if you get justice at the end of the day, sometimes it costs you quite a bit, right? To get to the end. And ADR has always been just an incredible opportunity either to settle your case or to arbitrate your case, and hopefully reach a result and have a process that you feel is more fair, that gives, your adjudicating officer more time to be involved in your case, and gives you as a litigant a lot more control over the process. And most importantly, in the vast majority of circumstances, at least in my opinion, can be quite cheaper than the traditional method of resolving disputes. So I also, when I was exposed to ADR for the first time, was immediately drawn to it because it, in my humble opinion, is a good alternative and a better alternative for many.
Did you go directly from law school to big law?
I did. In fact, I kind of I kind of started a big law earlier than I expected because as a summer associate, we had a huge patent case that was going to trial right at the beginning of my 3L year. And so they asked me to stay on as a third year law clerk. So basically, I started at the firm a year early and got to pay off part of my law school debt in the process, which was fascinating. And that first one was settled right at the courtroom steps, the day of trial, the day that it started. But then, of course, they just put me on another case, right, Chuck? Which is just what the big firms will do. So and I got to go to trial again, but this time for real. We actually went as a first year associate. I got to take trial witnesses, which was an incredible opportunity that just sort of fell in my lap. That was also a big patent case, but in Delaware. And I got to take a third party witness and an expert at that trial. And boy, did I fall in love with being in that courtroom. So I thought I thought I would never leave, or at least I wanted to never leave.
But you did. So
Oh,
talk
I
to,
did.
uh, just trace for us a little bit your thought processes in making that next move.
Well, I was really excited to become more involved in the court system and also in ADR. And so I started actually volunteering for the court when I was an associate at Morrison Forrester. And I served as a settlement volunteer, so mediating cases, which was quite an eye opener too, because in my practice, I did mostly technology, patent, life sciences cases. And here was this whole world, right, of personal injury disputes and employment disputes. So it got to really open my eyes to that side of the universe. And then I started doing judge pro tem work, so presiding over small claims appeals as a volunteer, right, for the court. And then really started falling in love with that kind of side of the process. And so I was appointed as a commissioner to the Superior Court in 2019, I want to say, somewhere around there, after I had made partner at my firm and made the difficult decision to make the jump over to the judicial side of things. So I went from being a big firm litigator to presiding over the restraining order calendar. And Chuck, let me tell you, that was quite a transition. I was a lot more popular at cocktail parties because no one ever wanted to hear about, my patent cases in Texas, but everyone wanted to hear about the cases that I had heard today, in court. And because in court everything's public and you could fully pull up a transcript, right? Unlike being an arbitrator or a mediator where you can never talk, right, about your cases, they made for interesting conversation in terms of you'll never believe the basic fact pattern I heard today.
I want to jump back a little bit in your career because I know there was a time that you shared with me about a celebrated interview for a job with the chief judge of the court. And tell me a little bit about that experience because I think when you shared it with me originally, I thought this is something that the viewing audience could really learn from.
Oh no. Well, you're asking me about one of my most embarrassing professional moments. And I ended up clerking with the chief judge. So I actually got that job. But I also interviewed with another judge on that court, and so the interview was going very well, and this was in the Northern District of California, and it was also with a judge who was a former partner at MoFo. And so I had strong references going in. I feel like I had a leg up, and then I just squandered the opportunity because he asked me if I was comfortable coming into chambers to start work at 6 a.m. And I do not have a good poker face, Chuck. So please don't ask me to play poker because I will give you all my money. And the answer that came out of my mouth was what you would expect a candidate to say, right? I was like, yes, I can get up and I'll be here and I take work very seriously. But my face must have been because I was calculating it, right? In my mind, okay, so I have to be in downtown San Francisco at 6 a.m., which means I have to get on the N Judah, 30 minutes earlier, which means I have to wake up to walk the dog and get dressed an hour before. So I'll be waking up at 4:30. So my face, you revealed it. And he called me on it. And he's like, Miss Kruze, really? Really? And then, of course, I came clean, Chuck. No, no, sir, it's going to be terrible. I mean, I'll do it because I really want the job. But, but no, 6 o'clock does not sound good, sir. Did not I did not get an offer from that judge. So yes. And I learned that it's always good to be honest.
There's a great moral of the story that others have experienced in like ways, but I thought that was a remarkably poignant anecdote for you to share, and I'm happy to take a few minutes to do that.
Yes, and now one of my lowest moments is on YouTube for everyone to see. So thank you, Chuck. I will be sure to pay you back soon in
So
the
you make
future.
this jump from a really a promising career with one of the finest law firms in the country, doing the kind of work that you enjoy, um, but that's a quite a career move to join the bench the way you did. Could you share with us just a little bit more what your thought processes were that led you to that decision?
Well, I'll be candid, because that was the moral of the last story. So my last year, I have always loved being in court, and I loved my coworkers, and I loved my clients, and I loved the cases. What I did not love, Chuck, was all of that pie. There was just so much pie, and so much work, right, to do. And so my last year before I joined the court, I had 3 back-to-back trials. They were all for a Japanese client, and just a fantastic client, a fantastic fact pattern. We won all of them, Chuck, and they just kept coming. But the bottom line was I was away from my family, and at the time, I had 3 very, very, very young children, including an infant, and then a 2 and a 4-year-old, and I was not seeing my family for large swaths of time because litigation rests for no one, right? And you always have to work hard and put your client's best case forward for them. And I've always been strongly committed to whatever work I commit to. And so I wanted to find something with a little more work-life balance. And I'll tell you, being an ADR professional today, I have never had the type of work-life balance that I have today in any job I've ever had. And I've had a lot of other jobs that we haven't talked about in a lot of different spaces. And this current profession, as I think a lot of ADR professionals agree, gives you the space and the flexibility to spend a little time with your family and then a little time doing what you love, professionally. And it's such a beautiful experience. So
I can't help thinking that your stint on the bench taught you something about yourself that has carried you forward now in your current practice as an ADR professional. Tell us a little bit about that.
I mean, most importantly, Chuck, just listening, right? Because as an advocate, you do a lot of arguing. And most lawyers learn how to write, they learn how to argue, but the art of listening is so important. And just giving people a fair opportunity to be heard and a procedure that they understand, and the ability to come in and tell someone their side of the story. You can never guarantee results, right? Because sometimes the facts are the facts and the law is the law. But you can always do your best to give people just the space where someone is genuinely listening to them, and genuinely trying to understand their point of view and their position. And if there's one thing that I learned in being a judicial officer, and presiding over all of those cases, it's that. It's that connecting with people on that level is one of the most important pieces. And it, of course, is incredibly valuable in a lot of other aspects in life. It taught me quite a bit about how to be a mother too. So I'm deeply grateful for that opportunity.
Did learning to listen come naturally to you?
I think so, right? What did not come as naturally is understanding that people, people come from very different backgrounds and experiences, and sometimes the way you see something at the start of something is not the way that you see something at the end of something. And that was constantly surprising to me. Like one of those magic eye pictures, right, Chuck, where you look at it one way and it's the older woman turning this way, right, with the witch's hat, and you look the other way and it's the younger woman with the bonnet on, depending on how your eyes focus. And so what was much more of a learned skill instead of listening, was the ability to keep your mind open. Because I think a lot of lawyers come to the table with a lot of experience, right, and expertise, and they think, especially with self-represented litigants, hey, I know the law, right? I know what I'm doing here. I know what's going on. Let me give you a perfect example. Someone came into a hearing very, very upset, Chuck, and he started yelling. He started yelling at me, at the judicial officer, right? And I think the natural tendency is to kind of be drawn backwards and to stop listening and to make assumptions, right? About, oh, this person doesn't know how to, do this, doesn't know how to behave, doesn't know how to comport themselves. But it turned out that this person was frankly very seriously aggrieved, right? And just didn't have the experience of ever being in court before, right? And came in with very, very strong, passionate emotions. And so after just a quick, reset on expectations in the courtroom, he was able to present his case in a very cohesive, and cogent manner, and really, explained very lucidly why he was upset, and understandably so. That is, I think, a skill that I learned on the court that also has been just invaluable in my experience as an ADR professional, because you never know which way the winds are going to blow. And when you think you know the answer, it's a good time to stop yourself and check yourself, and keep your mind open, and remind yourself that you got to wait until everything is finished, before rendering any kind of decision.
So, what caused you to forsake the bench and to launch into the career that you're currently enjoying?
Well, in short, COVID. So the COVID pandemic struck. And at that point, I had, oh, did I have two in preschool and one in public school? Or maybe it was two in public school and one in preschool at that point, but they were all immediately ejected from their normal daytime activities, Chuck, with no notice. And I remember calling Actually, one of the smartest women I have ever met. Her name is Diane, not to be confused with me, Diane. And I met her on a pharmaceutical case, and she has two PhDs, both specializing in infectious diseases. And I remember thinking, and this was early on in the pandemic, right? So is this going to be over, Diane, in a month, or maybe a few weeks, or is it really going to hit the US? When are these closures going to, when are my schools going to reopen? And boy, Chuck, I remember her laughing at me and saying over the phone, "Oh, Diana, this will be around for years and years." And me kind of looking at my shoes and thinking, oh, she's probably right because she's kind of one of the big dogs and she went to school twice for several years in this, and thinking, hey, it's time to pivot, right? So I thought about going back to the firm, because I actually to this day miss my old colleagues. I just spent the weekend with them at someone's birthday party, and saw a lot of my former partners. So that was a serious consideration. But one of my other new colleagues on the bench pivoted to the ADR field. And what just an incredible reminder, right? Of, my longtime love for ADR. And so I made the jump too, and I couldn't be happier, to have hit the water, because it's been an incredible experience.
But you really started from scratch. Now, that's not necessarily the easiest way to launch into a new chapter of your career. You did it and you succeeded. But maybe you could share with us some of the challenges you faced and how you dealt with them.
Well, it is like launching any new career, right? It's scary, especially if you consider yourself an old dog, as I did, right? It's like, am I really going to reinvent myself? At this stage in my life with three kids to put through college. But I reached out to a bunch of amazing leaders in the field, like you, right? And other individuals, and the ADR profession is incredibly warm and welcoming. And so I got advice, from a lot of people who'd done this for decades, about how to get cases, how to get on the right panels, how to join an ADR provider, and how to establish yourself. And I think through luck and hard work, right, the cases started coming in, and then it went from there. And of course, now I'm kind of on the flip side of there's a little too much pie again, Chuck. So that that work-life balance, always the grass is always greener, right? Because when you get started in something, you're just like, oh gosh, am I gonna be able to make it? Is it gonna work? And then when you've got too much work, you're like, oh gosh, how can I get less work? So I experienced that at the big firm too, right? You're either too busy or you're too slow. So,
Many of the people that we've interviewed in this California Conversations series have been really focused principally on arbitration, both domestic and international arbitration. Uh, and you have an arbitration component of your practice as well, but you also are doing mediation work. And I know you found this extremely satisfying work. And I wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about the source of that satisfaction.
well, nothing brings me greater joy than to settle an unsettleable case. Uh, those are also the hardest ones, right? When my least favorite thing to hear as a mediator is when you walk in, they say, "We're forced to be here," and and where there's no way you're going to settle this. But how wonderful is it to empower parties to take the risk out of the situation and to get a guaranteed result that's acceptable to both sides. And most importantly, to kind of remove the burden of litigation, from both individuals and from companies, frankly, because companies can feel that strain very strongly too. Yeah, have you ever heard the old Voltaire quote?
I'm not sure.
Okay, so it's probably it's originally in French, but it goes something like this, right? So fa famous guy, right? Voltaire, most people have heard of him, and it goes something like this. I've had incredible triumphs and incredible pitfalls, mountains of success and a lot of deep, deep pain in my life. But I've only been absolutely ruined twice. One when I lost a court case, and once when I won one. And so I will tell you, people come in right to any kind of adjudicative process, but especially in court, thinking that just because they have a really strong case, they're going to prevail, right, Chuck? And I'm sure you had clients like that as well. And it is an uncertain process. And so to take away that uncertainty and to take away kind of the the pain of litigation can be an incredible thing. I love serving as an arbitrator too. And my greatest joy in that respect is, court is very confined. There's rules, right, of procedure and of motion practice and of presentation that are set for you. And some judges will give you a little flexibility, right? But mostly it just is you play the game the way you play the game, right? It's like baseball. There's a lot of rules, and there's a lot of rules in arbitration too. But arbitration has incredible flexibility over the process, right? So I was in a preliminary hearing on a panel, just today with two fantastic wings. And the parties wanted to structure their case a little bit differently than the average case wanted to structure it. And we have the ability to do that, right? And they're structuring it in a way that's going to save both of their clients an incredible amount of money. It's going to put some key issues right out of the gate, right? That they're going to get determinations on, and then basically push some of the other issues later. And having that flexibility, Chuck, with the process to give parties what they need procedurally, it is such a benefit. And so I hope it serves those parties well. And I know it serves and has served a lot of people very, very well. So that's my favorite part about being an arbitrator is just basically uniquely tailoring every case to what people need, because some people need quick, fast, short decisions, and some people want a tome, right? And a long hearing where everyone, gets to be heard for weeks and weeks on end. But whatever you need, arbitrators can give it to you. And I think that that's fascinating and incredibly valuable.
You are now in a leadership position within the profession. And I want to ask you a couple questions, a little bit about what you are doing in your capacity as chair of the ADR Subcommittee of the California Lawyers Association. It's a significant responsibility. And maybe you can tell us first a little bit about the work of that committee, and then some of the things that you personally are trying to lead the professional community writ large across the state in this new burgeoning area of dispute resolution.
Well, becoming inadvertently, as you know, Chuck, chair, because I was the vice chair of the committee, and then got a sudden, there's a word, a Texas expression for it. What do they call it in terms of a well, something promotion? But I got an unknowing promotion into the president's chair. But our committee is comprised of just, I mean, the most exceptional members of the ADR community, including yourself, Chuck, right? And a lot of the other people who've served in and done interviews, right, with you on this series. And all of us, I think, share the common goal of promoting ADR. A lot of people have misconceptions about ADR, right? One of the presentations I just gave, I got a question, but there's no appeal process in ADR. You just get what you get. And it's like, well, actually, you can contract in or stipulate to an appeal process, right? People don't know a lot of these things. So I think promoting ADR and increasing the public's understanding that the court system isn't the only way to go, right? You can mediate your dispute, you can arbitrate your dispute. There's early, neutral evaluation where you can have somebody pick up your papers and listen to the story and tell you sort of how certain facts could be perceived or misperceived by a judge or a jury. And having a greater community awareness of that is something that the committee is really striving to accomplish. Another main goal that all of us are working collectively on is promoting California specifically as just, a hub of ADR in general. And a lot of the members of the CLA committee were involved in pitching and successfully winning the 2028 ICA bid. So we're going to be hosting that Congress in San Francisco. And I can't wait to share this beautiful city with people around the world, right? Because we have so much to offer. And we are one of the hearts of technology in the world, whether you're talking about AI or, even that old computer that's now sitting in my garage instead of my mom's. And so it's just promoting California as a space for the ADR community and ADR in general is also a huge goal of our committee. And I wish I could tell you that it's my hard work that's accomplished certain things like that, but it's really a team effort, right? And our committee is just comprised of the most amazing people. That's the gift that experience has given me, people like you and
Well,
other.
Diana, it is widely recognized that one of the challenges of the ADR community generally is to promote more gender and ethnic diversity. Uh, this is a big challenge, but I'd be interested in your thoughts and any suggestions or ideas that you have that we could consider in this topic.
It's a really huge challenge in the legal community broadly, right? And in the ADR field specifically. I will say that many of the major providers, ADR providers, have done incredible work in really not only getting a more diverse pool in the door, but also promoting them, retaining them, and making sure that they're actually appointed to panels. So I just saw the AAA numbers, for example, recently, right? And the new applicants that they're actually allowing onto the panel, those diversity numbers are increasing steadily. Still not to where we need them to be, but obviously progress in the right direction. An initiative that I'm currently a part of, which I'm really, really proud of, and again, a group effort by a huge number of people, is being one of the founding members of the Women's Resource Group at the AAA. And there we do roundtable discussions, we do presentations on the case assignment process, and are launching a mentorship program where people who have a lot of experience in the ADR community can really give a helping hand and support to people who are just starting in this practice. On a broader legal basis, one of my board positions deals with partnering with organizations like the Urban Debate League, which basically helps people, disadvantaged youth in the Bay Area. And frankly, there's a lot of them around the country, but I work mostly with the Bay Area organizations in getting kids into debating, into arguing, right? To take it full circle, check. And a lot of those people end up going to law school. And that has had a proven impact on diversity in the legal profession. And so we want to start as young as we possibly can to convert them over. And certainly everything that we can do to help in that respect is going to frankly strengthen our community because you've been, Chuck, on a lot of arbitration panels, right? and having three great minds instead of just one, and having all the different backgrounds and experiences really make for an incredibly strong both final award and process. And so I'm really honored to be part of a lot of those efforts. And I always feel like I need to do more because there's a lot of work still left to be done.
Well, we began this conversation, Diana, talking about the energy and the enthusiasm you bring to any task, but most recently here in our conversation about the future of arbitration and the next generation of people that will be coming along to help people solve the inevitable problems that will continue to occur in our society. And the more diversity and the more creativity and the more imagination we can bring to that process, the better. And people like you with your energy deserve all the plaudits we can give you for the strides you've taken and made so far. And I just want to thank you for everything that you've done, but particularly for joining me today for this segment of California Conversations. I know our viewers will really delight in learning more about you, but learning a little bit more about the opportunities that exist. Again, I say thanks in no small measure to your patent enthusiasm and eagerness to be sharing and helping those who are coming along behind us. Thanks, Diana Kruze, for being with us on California Conversations today. I wish you the very best.
Thank you, Chuck. I will see you soon.